Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here, welcome back to some more Outriders. I've been playing with most of the classes in the past few days, after equipping my Trickster, getting it ready pretty well. I decided to check out some of the other classes, especially when it comes to the Technomancer, and then I was thinking about the Devastator that I always wanted to actually try out first and make it my main when the game came out, but I did not and basically switched to the Trickster again. And now that I think about it, I am extremely glad that I did that in hindsight, because the class kinda misses a few of the things that I wish it had from the other classes. So let's talk about that, and we will also talk about a future update that we will get sometimes in the near future, possibly this week, maybe on Thursday. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video at any point, leave a like on it, or don't, it's your option, and let's jump right into it. But thank you to everyone for your patience and support. This weekend is the title of course, the latest message from the Outriders team. We have never taken it for granted. Stay tuned this week for our dev and patch news update, which I believe is supposed to happen on Thursday, but it might happen on a different day. Usually it seems that Thursday is a preferred date, but depending on how things go, it might be sooner or later. But this Reddit post is still the best resource if you want to check it out. We covered this already extensively here on this channel with all of the problems and the current workarounds that you can find. Now, speaking of problems, I've finally tested online co-op today, by the way, just for a brief moment with a bunch of you guys. And I will say this, I did not play co-op up until today since the game launched, but I was baffled by how bad it freaking works, to the point that it doesn't just ruin your online experience, it ruins literally the way you experience the game after that, because literally after trying it out for the very first time, it caused other issues when playing solo. Like, for example, I immediately noticed that I would get more frequent crashes. I would get the first crashes in regards to the anti-cheat and whatnot, and for some reason the anti-cheat was causing the game to crash as well. So holy smokes, that was intense. Another thing that I would keep you guys mindful of is to be careful with your inventory, because it might be lost depending on who you connect with, especially if you're trying to connect with people on the other platforms. Now, luckily enough, that has been disabled so far, but if you look over on Reddit, you will see quite a number of threads like these where people post their inventories after a crash or following a co-op play session where they would essentially lose their entire inventory. Now, luckily enough, we did, well, not luckily because it happened to us as well, but earlier today I was doing it, I lost my entire inventory, and luckily enough, upon exiting and entering one of the menu screens, I was able to get all of that back. It also seems that just going back into the lobby and then going back in out of the session worked, at least for me, but you could end up in one of these situations where your character is completely naked or lost a part of its items. Now, from what I'm reading, it seems that this seems to also be mostly a visual bug, so you might even see your character holding invisible guns or having these icons equipped that don't really actually show any information. But just to be safe, maybe it would be a good idea to maybe avoid it as much as you can, or maybe try to just do solo things, because you can do a lot of stuff solo. I know there's a lot of you guys out there that really like to play with your friends, but just keep in mind that it's pretty broken right now with online, which is unfortunate. But this also brings us to another unfortunate situation, one that I wanted to address in an earlier video, but I recently started leveling up my Devastator. Of course, previously I was playing with my Trickster, which was really insane, especially in the end game. Damage is off the hook. Of course, I'm also bringing up my Technomancer immediately after that, and it also felt powerful with the blighted rounds. In fact, 3 of the 4 classes have access to one specific type of ability that seems very similar to each of these. So for example, we have twisted rounds on the Trickster, we have blighted rounds on the Technomancer, and even the Pyromancer has volcanic rounds, which all are amazing abilities and pretty much the staple for most of the glass cannon endgame builds for these specific classes, especially so when you run really interesting combinations that either give you infinite ammo regeneration, or ways to increase your ammo capacity by crazy levels, like for example a tier 2 mod like the Perpetuum Mobile, which makes it so that twisted rounds is insane for the Trickster as you constantly regenerate it, and because it never falls off, it constantly stays, so you deal way higher damage than anything else in the game. So because of this type of interaction between the mods and these specific abilities, it's clear that the Devastator is falling off quite a bit in terms of endgame DPS. But this raises an important question: if you end up replacing one of its abilities to provide the Devastator with something that buffs up its weapon damage, what do you end up sacrificing? Because the abilities that the Devastator has are already in the game, they all seem to be pretty unique, and I would even argue that some of them have really interesting and unique uses that no other class has, which makes the Devastator that much more satisfying. So that's why, in order to better emphasize this idea, I want to bring arguments on both sides of the fence, both for and against the idea of replacing one of the Devastator's ability to provide something similar to the other three classes so that it doesn't fall off behind too much. And for that we have to look at the existing abilities that the class already has, and one that immediately crossed my mind that would be perfect for replacing would be Boulder Dash. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's because it already kind of looks like something you can already do by default, which is just sprinting with a golem ability activated and then doing a smash or melee ability at the end. It literally looks like that. The only advantage is the fact that it also interrupts, but guess what? Your melee also has an interrupt already baked into it. Now, of course, arguments could be brought that this is already a pretty awesome one against groups, and yes, it is, because you're kind of like a tank that rushes in and just deals all of this. But what if all of this was already baked into Golem, since both of these are already that similar? Why not have Golem be a little bit more useful and not just like a protective shield that you pop every like 30 seconds or so? Why not have that interrupt component on top too, and free one slot so that the Devastator can also have a weapon buff ability so that it doesn't fall behind that much? That was one of my proposed solutions. Another one, which makes a little bit less sense but it still makes a little bit of sense, is combining Earthquake with Impale. As a matter of fact, before we got all the information with all of the skills in the game, I genuinely thought that Earthquake would get an upgrade with the Impale, so that when you would do an Earthquake, it would have a chance to impale one or several enemies, and I would have definitely seen a nice upgrade to that. But of course, these are separate abilities and not one and the same, so that would be pretty awesome to look at, but maybe the Boulder Dash and just replacing it would be a much better solution. Totally let me know in the comment section down below. Now, of course, there are arguments, many more arguments against this entire idea. One of them is pretty simple. Why would you sacrifice what makes a class unique just so that it can seem way more closer to the other ones? Why would you want to add the same ability 4 times to all 4 classes just in the name of increasing DPS for everybody across the board? The second one is of course also the fact that, well, the Devastator simply doesn't have to be a glass cannon like every other class in the game. In fact, I've successfully played the Devastator as either a vampire kind of bleed type of character and also kind of like a tank, and in both of these situations it can work well. As a matter of fact, if you're like playing with a group of people and are aiming for high-end content, it might not be a bad idea to have a tank in the party that prevents all of the incoming damage, or at least mitigates it and helps its team in dealing more damage. Because if you think about it, if somebody is there to prevent damage or absorb it, while the others are purely focusing on DPS, it could very well mean that that party might complete that piece of content that much faster. Also combined, for example, with a healing from a Technomancer that could help out a little bit with that as well, though personally, after playing with the Devastator in the party, I did not find that to be needed. So again, it's a matter of preferences. Let me know on which side of the coin are you. Would you prefer to have one of the Devastator's abilities sacrificed in order to get an equivalent damage increase like like the other classes, or would you prefer to feel slightly less powerful in the name of diversity or uniqueness compared to the other classes? I'm really curious to see your comments in the comment section down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.